Hello everyone and most welcome to 727. I am recording here out in the sticks. It's a bit warmer today than it's been the last couple of days, but still snow is hanging from the trees and it's a lovely setting around here. I will start a new avenue of thinking with physician Theo Muller, or Mulder. He's a Dutchman, and I cannot read his work because it's in Dutch and I have great difficulty understanding. But the little I could find in English, it made some substance to understanding, and I also got some help of my friend Jan. Well, exogenous, let's start that. Exo is outside. If you remember exoskeleton, that's what the spider has, for instance, a skeleton that's outside of the flesh. Exogenous is meaning directed outwards. Endogenous is directed inwards. And this could be seen in different aspects. We could start with attention. Attention could be exogenous, and that means I pay some attention to what's happening around me. For instance, we're having bird outside. What's inside of this room? Lovely painting. A chair that's quite amazing, looks like a throne. And my hunting hat. Those are different things that exogenous attention gives. But I can also lead in the other direction. I can go endogenous. And that means going to the inside. And then when it comes to attention, I put attention to my sensory organs, kinesthesia, balance organs, proprioception, hearing, smelling, feeling, sensing, thinking. What is my thinking now? What is the thinking doing? Feeling, very important. Theo Muller means that we need to start in the endogenous. That's where it started once upon a time, when we were in the belly of the mother, and also the first years after that. Everything was directed inwards. We put some little attention, exogenous, but that was usually not very skilled. When the skill came and the interest started really at somewhere 2 years old, it wouldn't let go. And one could say the exogenous won in the end. Our outward intention became too great and we lost a little bit of the endogenous attention. But that's affecting actually the exogenous. When we don't have endogenous attention, exogenous attention goes down. And it's not only that, when we don't have endogenous, we cannot take care of ourselves. And we are actually the whole input device that are perceiving. And if you don't have that in good functioning, nothing will come in. You will not be able to direct yourself outwards. And now you wonder, is inwards a sort of sensing directly or grabbing things in the inside? and the outwards is that to look, hear and feel the things that are outside. When it comes to Theo Mulder, that's not the case, because he is talking about something called motoric imagining. To be able to imagine, and when I say imagine, I mean everything. Imagine smell, thinking, sensing the world, what's inside, what's outside. That is for him a motor action. It's nothing perceived, so to speak, in that way. It's a motor action. And that motor action is, well, let's say as a starting point, a cause system. That motor action is a cause system. Not attending to the cause system and its strange attractor will make it weak. It needs to be disturbed by the stirring attention. You could say that. And if it's not stirred inside, it will weaken. You need to go in there and make a mess, so to speak. No, you need to do things to strengthen the chaotic system. As you remember, it gets stronger and stronger the more disturbances there are, no matter what they are. And here's the point of the whole thing. The exogenous motor imagery system is the same. They are similar. It's a practice. It's an action that is similar. So if you don't do the endogenous motor action, perception, imagery, it will be worse than when it comes to the exogenous motor system. Yes, it's a handful, but we mentioned before actually that it could be that perception is not perceiving something out there. That is actually something constructed by a model. And we need to remember it's a model. That's why I often repeated that. Because if you slide back of thinking it's not a model, it's how it is, which everyone does, you will not be able to go into Theo Mulder. Actually, you will not understand much of anything. So it's well worth understanding what is motor imagery. Well, let's talk just about attention. I think that was tough enough start as it was. And this is a little article by Catherine A. McLean, and it's called Interactions Between Endogenous and Exogenous Attention During Vigilance. The ability to remain vigilant over long periods of time is critical for many everyday tasks. But control studies of visual sustained attention show that performance declines over time when observers are required to respond to rare stimuli events, targets, occurring in a sequence of standard stimuli events, non-targets. When target discrimination is perceptually difficult, this vigilance decrement manifests as the decline in perceptual sensitivity. We examine whether sudden onset stimuli could act as exogenous attentional cues to improve sensitivity during a traditional sustained attention task. Sudden onset cues presented immediately before each stimulus attenuated the sensitivity decrement, but only when event timing was variable. Exogenous cues increased overall sensitivity, but did not prevent performance decline. Finally, independent of the effects of some sudden onsets, a constant interval improved vigilance performance. Our results demonstrate that exogenous attention enhances perceptual sensitivity during vigilance performance. But that effect is dependent on observers being able to predict the timing of stimulus events. Such a result indicates a strong interaction between endogenous and exogenous attention during vigilance. We relate our findings to resource model of vigilance as well as to theories of endogenous exogenous attention over a short time period. So that put in context is a little bit, if you have the idea of object in space in front of subject and you're not aware that is a model, you will draw your attention outside automatically, I would think. You need to understand that principle. Once your attention is drawn outside, you cannot give energy to the inside system, the motor imagery system for the endogenous. It's a little bit, this is the inside, it's a harmonious, chaotic system. You are not attending it, it becomes straighter, it becomes more regular as this one. The regularity can end in complete stillness, and then you don't have a strange attractor anymore. And that strange attractor is needed to go outward and do exogenous motor imagery. We need imagery, something that usually was called sensory input before, but it's not an input, it's actually directed outwards. Nothing comes from the outside, it's directed outwards. And oddly enough, this can actually be seen in all paintings. Until a certain phase, there was a beam, a certain phase in history. In paintings, there was a beam coming out of the eyes. People still, on an intuitive basis, understood that perception is directed outwards. It's nothing coming into the eyes, not as such. And that is depending on the person. Nobody can perceive to the same level, the same number, the same quantity, the same quality. Endlessly I repeat subject and object in front of this. You see what happens when the chaotic system strands, it becomes this. It becomes weakened. And this is a weakening. It's not actually something you believe in. It's partly a gestalt, but it's what happens when the system goes down. It has a lower level of functioning. There is no longer a strange attractor. This will always happen when the system doesn't work anymore. And this is always what happens in burnout. You always get object in space in front of subject when you get burned up, when you get stressed. Because the system stops to work. Or better to say that the level of functioning goes down. And I think you remember now that the world is fractal. I think this could help to understand that for an object to exist, speak of object or something even more real, object with an insight, we need to have our own chaotic system activated. Otherwise, the interaction can never happen. because an object can never come to life without an interaction between the outside and the inside. Two single attractors, two strange attractors interacting. So what Theo Mulder is pointing at is the pathology of perception, pathology of cognition. What happens when it doesn't work to its optimum? What happens when it's traumatized? It's disturbed. Well, you have less objects and you'll have less subjects. You have less of a person and you have less of the things outside. In a healthy system, we rather have the outside chaotic system interacting with the inside chaotic system, and then you can have reality. Well, that's a living thing, reality. You can have colors, you can have tastes, and all those that we usually describe in our senses. And typical for this in the stress vision is that depth disappears from reality. Fractal depth is not three-dimensional, pendicular, Cartesian coordinate depth. This is real depth. This is the depth of reality, not the disease, so to speak, not the pathology. So it's a healthy system needs to interact with its inner core, so to speak, because that has a stabilizing effect. And the lack of stabilization is shown in a rigid movement of the body. And in the rigid movement of the body, you can actually develop a chaotic system. And that chaotic system will turn up very sensible, very visible as shakings. And that's when the system is going in a healthier endogenous direction. The shaking shows that the chaos is coming back. Slowly we go, so to speak, from Pythagorean stability, or the stability of Parmenides, or the stability of a sick person. This is going to lead to autism and schizophrenia in the end. Schizophrenia is the complete lack of a strange attractor, or nearly a lack of strange attractor. Schizophrenia sufferers have no connection to themselves inside whatsoever and have no perception, so to speak. They're usually characterized with this staring gaze that stares outside to the objects to see an object. And it was so fantastically described by Wittgenstein, the stare of the schizophrenic, the object eyes, so to speak. That is a shutting out of all perception. Those objects are dimmed out, they are deadened. And in tests, schizophrenic has a great difficulty in perceiving different color tones, cannot clearly distinguish them, have a great problem with depth, actually affects their way of moving about. They have to move about in a very repetitive way, otherwise they will bump into things. It could also be seen and heard in the orational form. They have great difficulty getting some life to their voice. It's deadened out. It's flatline. It doesn't have this singing, lively quality that chaotic system does. So it's a little bit what Theo Mulder is pointing is in this preliminary lecture about him. The the real chaotic nature of reality, the fractal view. Fractal shows that there are no straight lines. So even if this is going to give the perception in your mind of something actually geometrically very sharp and edgy, this is just a helping tool. It doesn't exist that way, but it's a helping tool and works that way. We should never fall into the trap to think it's possible with perpendicular 90 degrees of dimension. That is not a reality, can never be a reality. And to know that, I think it's very helping in getting an embodied understanding about how the world really works. But most important is, of course, going inwards, stirring about there, having a gander inside. Very much important. And when, as the exogenous start to come alive again, you can also stimulate that by expanding, taking in what's outside. May be recommendable to divide the day in an exogenous part. Well, we usually do that already in a way, but even more so. But we always do that. The working part is exogenous and the resting part is endogenous. We don't really literally have to take rest, but we can do activities that are more directed to ourselves. And we can put a bit more intention to ourselves. So there's no need to do radically different things. Different things, yes, but they don't have to be radically different. And in my opinion, that's my private opinion, I think the break between the exogenous to the endogenous should be not very sharp either. You shouldn't sharply go to the endogenous. Let it take half an hour or something like that, slowly adapt. Whereas going from the endogenous to exogenous, that would usually be very quick and very hard to stop. There are no really good methods there. How do you get into yourself? It's so easy to put attention to the outside, but it's a bit tougher to calm down enough so you can begin to balance up and put some intention to the endogenous part of the system. But that can be done with practice. Well, the majority of the world's population already know how to do that. But it needs to be put in practice. I think it would take its time. And I would suggest patience here. Do not stress these things. Stress and being too hard bound to cause this once more. So do look out, be gentle with this process. And I think I shouldn't be too long with this first introduction because there's more than enough to think about anyway here. So I say thank you very much for the patience of listening to yet another subject. Theo Mulder, can you find anything in English? It's most welcome, preferably something introductory, and do not send me any link to something vastly complicated. Headaches is not my cup of tea in the beginning anyway. I'm more than happy to delve into that later. Have a very pleasant afternoon, and I say thank you from the woods. Bye bye.